Hey folks, today we're covering Tinto Talks 64, and this week St. Dave UK is going to be talking to us about army graphics, how they work, how they progress, and how you can see them change during your campaigns in Europa Universalis 5. And we're just going to get straight into it. So as he says here, armies are one of the most important features in the game, and certainly combat is one of the most exciting things to interact with. So they wanted to put a lot of effort into making it looking just right. Unlike previous games, armies appear as groups composed of multiple individual soldiers. The number of soldiers reflects the size of the army. The median size is about 15 models, but they do range from 1 up to 30. And as you can see in these screenshots here, there's one lowly soldier. You've just got one levy, I guess. And then in the next screenshot, you can see a bunch of more soldiers all together. You can see their weapons, their shields, their armor, their helmets, all this cool stuff. And then in the last one, I think that's the 30, and you can see them all bunched in there, getting ready for a bit of a war. Each soldier is a representation of the specific regiment in your army, and aside from reflecting your country and its colours, it also reflects the specific regiment's unit type, culture, and ethnicity. This means that a unit model will have appropriate weaponry for their current unit type. For example, crossbows versus archers, and multi-ethnic empires will have a diverse army through uniform style and skin colour of their troops. And then he's got some more screenshots here to show that off. So one thing kind of called out there a little bit is that your armies that you see on the map are actually composed of the army composition, if that makes sense. So unlike Crusader Kings, for example, where you see an army and you're wondering, like, what's this army made up of? And then you generally have to go to the ruler, hover over their army, and then in that army composition, it will tell you what troops they have, and then you can presume that is what that army is made up of. In Europa Universalis 5, you can actually see the rough army composition just by looking at the army. So if they've got like 3 regiments of soldiers, 3 regiments of cavalry, and a cannon, you'll see 3 soldiers, 3 cavalry people, and you'll see the cannon getting pulled behind them as well. So you can see just at a glance, without even looking in any kind of menu, roughly what that army is made up of, and if you think you're going to take it on as well. And then some other things they're going to talk about later about uniformity and stuff like that could also help you at a glance just see, do I want to take on this army or not? Okay, I'll run away. Maybe I'll take them on in battle. I think I'm going to win. And you can see some of that already in these screenshots. You can see, you know, there's some uniformity here in the other screenshot with the archers. There's a bit more of a mismatch of helmets, armor types, stuff like that. And he's going to talk about that in a second as well. So units are further randomized by picking random texture materials for each component. It might be as simple as swapping out leather for cloth, or might even be changing the pattern the cloth uses. So really just changing it so they don't look exactly the same. You have that kind of smorgasbord of styles, colors kind of. The colors will always match your country, but there won't be like a uniform color across them till later on in the game. In general, they've approached this idea by having 3 tiers of troops per age to represent the weight of the unit. For example, peasants, soldiers, and knights. And there's more screenshots here showing that off. So you can see the first one, very peasant focused. Maybe this is a rebellion or something maybe. In the middle one, this is probably more your general soldiers. And then the next screenshot, these are your knights, kind of visualization of them. And you can see that progress through all of those screenshots. Although some features have been exaggerated to be visible by the player using the camera, unit models are always closely based on real references. Historical authenticity is key to all the artistic decisions they make. And when I got to go to the Tinto studio, that is something that St. Dave UK actually talked about quite a lot in a presentation he had for us, where he really went into how this system works and also like how they wanted to base everything off historical records. They talked about this in the announcement video as well, but really trying to make it so it looked like historically accurate as they can with the sources they can find, which again is fantastic to see. Units will adopt a new visual age only when they are upgraded to a unit from that age. So your units won't instantly swap to the Age of Reformation clothing when you enter the Age of Reformation. You will first need to embrace the relevant institutions, research the relevant advances, and then upgrade your regiments, which is fantastic for how this is going to work. You're not going to move into this new age and then everyone just upgrades and they all look better. You'll be able to see, again, just visually looking at an army, okay, that guy hasn't got this institution, so I'm probably going to be able to beat this army. Or you might have somebody on your border where, again, you see their army and you're like, they look like they've got the shot and pike institution or something like that. So I'm going to try to stay at peace with that guy, wait till I've upgraded my units, and then go after him. So again, with it not instantly upgrading them, you can see, again, the progression of an army visually without having to then dig into their menus and try figuring out what they're going to do. So in the next screenshots, they're going to show us examples of how European peasant levies will develop throughout the ages. So you can see in this first one, kind of typical farmer-looking people with some simple weapons, getting ready to be wiped out by the army. In the next one, you can see they kind of stood a little bit more kind of uniformed here as they've progressed into the next stage. And then you can see the next stage. This looks like colonial American almost, with the uniforms, the hats, and things like that. And then the last one, we're getting closer to that Victorian age. You can see the hats, you can see their uniforms have changed. So you can really see through those 4 pictures there, the progression of an army. It isn't like some other games where the army just looks the same no matter what era you're in. In EU4, armies just look like armies. They didn't really look that different. And, you couldn't really tell how good an army was just visually looking at it. But you can see from these how you can visually see that difference just looking at the army units. In the next one, they're going to show professional soldiers. Now, this is the best example, I think, of this. You can see in this screenshot one of the early ages. They're looking kind of cool. They're looking, pretty good there in this previous age. The next age you go into, this almost looks like Cromwell England armies or something like that. They look a little bit more like a professional army, which all of these are. And then you go into the next tier, and yes, you can see those English uniforms maybe. They're looking that little bit more like a cohesive army. And then in the next one, they look like a proper army. They've got all the same kind of uniformed army look. There is variations, as he said. There's going to be variations on each unit just so they don't look exactly the same. But you can see they look like one army from one country, the different soldiers in there. And I think these look great. I know a lot of people have feedback about the 3D portraits, but that same tech has been used in making these armies look how they look. And I think this looks fantastic. Again, anything that they can add to the game where you could just visually see something and you don't have to go digging into a menu is one less thing you have to worry about when you're playing the game. And then, as I've been saying all the way through this, there is a hidden system called Uniformity, which is essentially a calculation of discipline, experience, army tradition, and whether they are levies or regular troops. As a regiment gains uniformity, they will gradually progress towards the ideal look of your country, which is generated from your primary culture. Most countries' ideal is randomly generated, but there are some specifically designed to appear historical, and I'm sure whatever they do for DLC, we'll see more of these added in the future. But I'm sure like the English, the French, maybe the American, Prussians maybe, some of these armies are probably going to have specific looks just for those countries, and we'll probably get more in the future. Historically speaking, most peasant levies were not pitchfork wielders, but were typically outfitted with a minimum of cheap weaponry and often a helmet. With uniformity, they represent the full range, from squishy farmers to ironclad gendarmes. As they climb higher up the uniformity scale, the more they will pull from the soldier pool of assets, taking a helmet here, a pole arm there, until they are fully outfitted for war. And we saw that in the peasantry one we went through. At the beginning, they just had simple weapons, but even for those, by the end of it, they had some proper rifles and things like that, as they pulled more and more from the soldier pool of assets to make them look that little bit more uniform. Furthermore, some elements will look fancier if you have higher uniformity. For example, raw leather straps will get blackened or whitened, and some wigs might get powdered. That's the English army, or maybe the French one. Gonna get some powdered wigs in there. They're not judges, well they are, but they're judging your life on the battlefield. Foreign culture units that you employ will gradually adopt elements of your primary culture clothing as they become more uniform. So again, that's pretty cool. You bring in these foreign element armies, and then as they kind of stay in your employ by the sounds of it, they gradually get kind of assimilated into your primary culture, and they slowly start looking more and more like your troops, which again is pretty cool. They've got another bunch of screenshots here showing, again, I think the English army maybe here, and you can see this progress again. In the first screenshot, they kind of just stood around a little bit, not really kind of ready for battle that much, and you can see the slight difference in helmets, weapons, things like that. And then the next screenshot, they're stood in line, getting ready for those volleys, and then in the third screenshot, they look even more kind of uniformed. They're stood exactly in order, getting ready for their orders, and they're ready to conquer some of the world for England. And then as these armies march across the map, the audio will reflect your visuals. You'll not only be able to hear the size of the army, but also the equipment of the individual soldiers. Peasants wearing light cotton tunics will sound very different from plate troops with their steel weapons. So again, even visually, now audio, you'll be able to hear these different armies. I mean, by the time you hear them, it's probably going to be a bad time, but it is going to be there, which again is pretty cool. EU5 will release with 7 main graphical archetypes. As well as impacting unit appearance, archetypes are also the primary way they have divided several other parts of the game, such as character portraits, city buildings, event illustrations, and UI skins. And the 7 they have is Central American, Eastern Asian, European, Middle Eastern, North American, South Asian, and Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm sure in the future we'll get more subdivision of this, but this is a pretty decent amount for the launch of the game. We're not going to get everything again just looking kind of the same when this game comes out. There are those 7. And then right at the end here, they're going to show a few examples of those different culture ones. He does point out here, these haven't had like full polish done to them. They don't look as good as the previous screenshots, but they wanted to just show these off to show us. So yeah, you can see some armies here in blue, some in red with some cool armor and things like that. And again, here, some North American, it looks like natives, and they've got this cool armor looking. They've got the headdresses. They've got different weapons based on where they're from. And then the next one, you can see the wolf pelts over their head. This just looks awesome. Like, this looks so cool. I want to see what professional North American armies look like. It's going to be very interesting. And then the last screenshot here, is this the Ottomans maybe? But you can see one of them looks like they've got a turban on, and then these different helmet types. And again, as they've talked about, as you progress through, this will become a little bit more unified as you get that uniformity up and different stats as well. But with that, that is the end of the dev diary this week. Let me know what you think about this. I think this just looks so good. As I've been talking all the way through this, being able to visually see changes is way better than having to dig into menus and see things. So the way you can see army composition just by the unit types that are in there, you can see their uniformity. Is this a really good army I'm going up against, or does it look kind of unorganized and I might be able to take them on? Is it peasants, professional armies? All these different things. Have they got a cannon? Have they got a supply wagon with them? If they don't have that, are they going to starve and get attrition if I drag them into my land? Something like that. So everything I've seen here looks great. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, though. But with that, we'll leave it there today. So hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm covering EU5, all the dev diaries, the Tinto flavor, getting all the information we can on this game before it does get released. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.